We got a very special show, a very special treat for you guys today. My main man, Ben Golliver from the Washington Post, from the Greatest of All Talk podcast is up here. We talk quickly about the three-point barrage trend in the NBA this season, where it's going, where it's headed, whether it's good, whether it's bad or indifferent. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation. Check this out. I was watching the NBA Cup game between Oklahoma City and the San Antonio Spurs. And, pretty much a week and a half, 2 weeks into the season, they started the hand-wringing about the three-point shooting. And I forget who was on. I think Reggie Miller and them were on the call last night. And Oklahoma City at one point was 13 for 47. They missed 34 threes, y'all. Missed 34 threes. And it was as brutal and as painful to watch in real time as that number would indicate. And then, of course, I wake up this morning and in my freaking inbox, of course, I'm subscribed to Ben Golliver's Washington Post newsletter. And just like that, Ben is like, hey, man, have we crossed the freaking Rubicon here with the three-point shooting? So please, man, tell me why you were compelled to talk about this.
Well, look, it's been going on for like 5-6 years. Everybody was really excited when Steph and Harden were first shooting threes. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. We've never seen anything like this before. There was a nice rush, and I think the viewership numbers were there, right? But you're looking at this last 5 years, you're wondering, are fans as locked in as much as they were? And then if they're not, if ratings are slipping a little bit, is style of play one of the things driving people away? Because it's something I hear constantly from my podcast listeners. I'm sure you feel it. You probably hear it from your listeners too, is like it just gets a little bit repetitive. And this year, the three-point shooting has just been wild. I mean, you've got Boston taking more threes than twos every single game by a lot. I mean, it's systematic, way more so even than James Harden's Rockets used to be, right? So they're sort of the cutting edge. The other big trend I'm seeing is with a lot of the young stars. We're talking about guys who were like number 1, number 2, number 3 type picks from the last 5 years. Those guys are all jacking three-pointers like crazy, and it doesn't matter what position they play. Could be LaMelo Ball, could be Anthony Edwards, could be Victor Wembanyama, could be Brandon Miller. All those guys are just putting up a ton of threes. And you know as well as anyone, I mean, even if you're a good three-point shooter, if you're taking a ton of threes, that means you're missing a lot of threes. It means you're going through cold quarters. It means you're going through cold halves. It means a team like Oklahoma City, that's one of the best teams in the entire league, they have a tough night against San Antonio because they can't shoot the threes, and all of a sudden they look mortal, and people are like, what's wrong with the Thunder, right? Well, the fact is they're that leveraged on threes, and so a bad night is easier to spot than ever before. But the question, I think, for the league office and for fans is, do we like smart basketball, or are we turned off by this quote-unquote version of smart basketball? And if it's the latter, what needs to change to kind of get these teams to go a different direction, right? Because like James Harden in Houston, they reeled it in a little bit after they missed 27 straight three-pointers in a playoff series, right? They reel it in a little bit when people just get kind of tired of watching James pound. Maybe he can't hold up in the playoffs. But we've seen some of these teams evolve, right? Boston's got 5 shooters basically at all times, right? Oklahoma City with Chet Holmgren, they can have 5 shooters at all times. They're not leveraged on just one guy to be hit or miss like the Rockets used to be. And so the threes aren't going anywhere. They're skyrocketing again. I think that's a chance within the next 10 years, if they don't change the rules, every team in the league is going to be taking more threes than twos. And at that point,
that's just not a good product. It's just not.
It's All-Star Weekend, right? It's like we already have the three-point shootout. We don't need that 82 nights a year plus the playoffs, right?
I completely agree. I think last night, because we had talked about this on group chat, and I was like, look, when I watch Boston fire up 55 threes in a game, I don't feel as instinctively annoyed by it, because it feels like, all right, not only are they playing quote-unquote winning basketball, but their roster has been constructed to do this over the course of like 4 years, right? Where it's like, yeah, Big Al is supposed to take these above the break threes and let alone corner threes, right? Obviously, when Porzingis is out there, he's been taking these shots since his rookie year, and he should be encouraged to do so, to the point where, when he was in Dallas and people told him, like, bro, quit the post-up nonsense. Like, his own coach was like, your post-ups are inefficient. Get your ass to the three-point line. I think where it crosses a line for me is if I'm watching OKC and Lou Dort is taking a three-pointer with 18 seconds left on the shot clock. Alex Caruso is taking a three-pointer with 18 seconds left on the shot clock. Even Chet Holmgren, I feel like should not be taking a three-pointer with 18 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, it's just not a rewarding viewing experience. And like, people could say whatever they want. Like, it is just better to watch a guy barrel into the lane, try to finish over a big man, or, up fake, get into the, the shorter mid-range game and try to take one of those, than it is to just watch dudes like just 7-8 possessions in a row where 7 threes have been jacked up and 5 of them were misses. And like, we all know, like, that's like the easiest quote unquote way out. It's just like, man, this just doesn't feel like a labor intensive style of play. And if you feel like these guys aren't working hard out there, I can understand why fans get the feeling that they're not watching something that feels rigorous.
Well, for me, I think, first of all, I think guys are playing hard. I mean, especially a team like Oklahoma City. I mean, they really busted on the defensive end. Those guys are flying around. They're creating turnovers. But you're in good company, Woz. Kevin Durant said the exact same thing you just said during one of his post-game press conferences earlier this season, sitting at his locker in Los Angeles. He's like, we're looking around the league trying to decide, like, what's a good shot, what's a bad shot anymore. Some people are coming down, pulling up with 20 seconds on the shot clock over 2 defenders in transition, and the analytics are saying, hey, that's an okay shot because it's a 3, not a 2, so go ahead and take it. And he's saying, kind of like an old head perspective, like, hey, when I came in the league, you were definitely not allowed to take that shot. That was absolutely a bad shot, and not only is it a bad shot, but it's a bad watch, which is what you're talking about. I'm of a little bit of two minds because I think what we're seeing is teams are doing whatever they possibly can to generate three-pointer shots for their best players, right? And so a lot of times, if you're Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or you're one of these other stars, you're not going to get a clean look at a 3 in the half court most possessions, right? Because maybe you're getting trapped, but certainly you're going to face the best defensive player is going to be guarding you every single time. The cleanest look you might ever get during the game is that rush up the court, take it with 20 seconds left on the clock. And if that's the only clean shot you can get, you should take it, because if you're a good enough three-point shooter, the math says, hey, this is going to add up for you by the end of the game. You're seeing that with a lot of different types of players, like I mentioned earlier. How many early clock threes or off the dribble threes does Wemby take, right? Drives people crazy because he's 7'4". He's not quite strong enough to work his way into the paint, to get these turnaround twos, that kind of stuff going to the basket. And so he really relies heavily on the threes. And one of the best ways he can get them is by taking it before the defense reacts, right? Because he draws so much attention. So I think that there's some level of a defense on the basketball merits of those shots. But from a viewing product, everybody turned off the All-Star game last year because guys were just going back and forth.
The All-Star game is just horrible.
Yeah, but that's where the regular season games are kind of going, right? If you're just taking quick threes as soon as you cross half court and you're just trading those back and forth, and you're allowing teams to go on these 20-0 runs, or you're giving up a 20-0 run. I was at a game earlier this season. The Spurs were up 40-14 after the first quarter. And they lost going away, Woz. They weren't even competitive. It wasn't even close in the fourth quarter. Like, I've never seen anything like that. So that's where I get into these questions of, is this the right direction for competitive balance? Is this the right way we want to be teaching young kids how to play the sport? Can we get a healthier dynamic so that these guys aren't hunting those shots as aggressively as they are? Because I actually think even though it feels weird, it offends our basketball sensibilities. We look back 10 years and say no one would have been allowed to take that shot except for maybe Steph Curry, right? There's a real logical defense for it. I mean, Oklahoma City is a fine-tuned operation, right? They know exactly what they're doing down to the decimal point in terms of like their efficiency and how they're approaching stuff. And if that team is driving you nuts, then I feel like we need to take a step back. And it's like, don't hate the team, don't hate the player, maybe hate the game, right?
Yeah, I wonder how we discourage this shot outside of, like, I've always felt like the three-point line needed to be moved back even further. Yeah. I know it's like, but then we have to, like, maybe expand the court, or maybe we have to, like, ban the corner three, or all of this stuff. But, like, something I think does need to be done to discourage this shot from being spammed in the way that it is. And I get it. Like, Oklahoma City wasn't doing something unreasonable. Shea was drawing like doubles, sometimes triple teams against the Spurs. And like, the bottom line is, it was Wiggins, it was Case and Wallace, it was like, these were the guys. It was Dort, it was, Caruso. These were the guys who were left open. And it's like, look, like the numbers, the coaching is saying, hey, I catch it with nobody in front of me, I need to rise and fire. And they were losing for most of that game. So I get it. Part of it is like, we're losing, so we want to get up threes. I don't know. I finally hit my breaking point with the jacking up on the threes. And I want to get you out of here on this. What do you think Adam Silver can do to mitigate these problems, both long and short term?
Well, you mentioned the idea of moving the three-point line back. I would point to the 90s when they moved the three-point line forward, because they were trying to kind of incentivize people to shoot threes, and all the conspiracy theories, Mike couldn't hit the threes from the normal line. So you cut him a little slack and all of a sudden he's hitting them, right? But if you look at how quickly teams adapted, it's incredible. You can see a blip in the chart. If you just do a chart of three-pointers attempts per game every year from when they brought the three-point line into the league in 1980 until now, you will know exactly the moment they had the shorter three-point line, because teams immediately started taking more. And so what that tells me is, if you did move the line back, you would get immediate adjustments in terms of how teams value certain type of shots, how willing they are to let role players who maybe aren't good shooters take those deep shots, how much a team like San Antonio might say, hey, Wemby, we're going to try to run more lobs to you at the rim. We're going to try to do more pick and roll because we actually think that's going to pay off more efficiently than having you shoot from like 2 feet further back if they really move the three-point line back by a lot. I think it's something they should be testing in the G League, right? The craziest outside-the-box solution, someone just emailed me today, and I'm curious what you would say about this. What if they left everything the same, but dunks are worth 3 points? So you're highly incentivizing people. You got to go at the rim. You got to have those kinds of collisions. Maybe you get an and one dunk, and that's your 4-point play. Like, what should we really reward as a 4-point play? A guy who hits a 3-point shot, somebody hits his wrist, or a guy who barrels through.
Oh,
LeBron,
that's one of my point of emphasis is. Sorry to cut you off, but I do think the way that people are barely allowed to contest, I think, is a problem. We need to cut down on the amount of things we call a foul on a jump shot. I really do think I think that's one of the major, like, when I watch people close out and they're like trying to fly out the way and also get a contest up, I think that needs to be dealt with. The way we police contests and quote unquote fouls on 3-point, like some of the way, like even I know Harden is like the most egregious example, but some of the ways this guy even be landed and he's trying to he's foul hunting on these jump shots, I think that needs to be legislated out. Bring the 3-point line back and allow more hand checking, grabbing, and holding. I just think we need to allow way more physicality, bring the scoring down, bring the shooting down. I think that would make stuff way better.
Well, when they had the little pivot in the middle of last season where they were calling things a little bit tighter, going to the basket, not giving as many calls, I thought that actually helped. I thought it looked better. I thought it set the stage for a pretty competitive playoffs. I've been pretty happy with the quality of play to start this regular season, in large part because it hasn't been as many blowouts. We're getting a lot of these games going down to the wire. Like, even bad teams, Milwaukee, Detroit, they're playing close games, which is ultimately, to me, what's the most important. Like, you want to have these competitive games. You definitely don't want one-sided shootouts. But, what's really worth 4 points? Shooting a three and having somebody hit your wrist, right? Or dunking all over somebody, taking the foul and making the free throw. Like, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like, you have to change the incentives. You have to give people a reason to attack the basket and have those high-flying type of plays. And, I realize that's radical, but I do think we're reaching a point where if people aren't already being turned off en masse, if these trends continue for another 2 years, there's almost no doubt, because the whole sport's going to become threes.
Well, there you have it, y'all. Ben Rockin' Jock Golliver on the show today, columnist at the Washington Post, co-host of the Greatest of All Talk podcast with the homie Andrew Sharp. Make sure you guys subscribe to go listen to that podcast. Ben, tell these people they can find your excellent NBA coverage, man.
Greatestofalltalk.com, WashingtonPost.com/sports. And no one has ever called me Rock and Jock, so don't get it twisted, listeners.
All right, Ben. Thank you, brother.
All right, take care, man.
All right, guys, that was our show for today, man. Make sure you subscribe to the Ringers YouTube page. Make sure you're hitting that like button on this video. The algorithm loves when you guys do that. And make sure you hit that notification bell so that you're alerted every single episode of In My Feelings in your inbox, man. Happy holidays to all of you guys and your family. We'll see you guys next week. Peace out.